last name was Toledano. It hardly gets any more Jewish than that. He actually went to Toledo, Spain. And he had a tour guide whose last name was Toledo. And he asked the tour guide, hey, is that true, that? And the guy said, yeah, we all are here. We're all Sephardic. And to this day, this is over 20 years ago, to this day, this man has really done very little about this. I think he brought me a book from Spain on the Sephardim. He's done very little. It is possible to not have a contribution. And many of us sit at that junction today. What if I don't return? What contribution would be amiss? That when I framed that question in that particular way, thinking of my own children, it was an easy decision. It was an easy decision. You see, I was 20 years old when I first came to the United States on a tourist visa. By the way, I'm an American citizen. I never spent a single day in the U.S. illegally, so just so you know. And neither did my brother. We waited a process for him to come. It took us a whole year waiting, and we never broke absolutely any law. So, just for you, brother. And also, if you notice, if you look at our tag, we have different last names, even though we're full brothers. I told myself, when I become an American citizen, I am going to make my Hebrew name, I am going to make it my legal name. My father's name, many of you knew Jaime Levy. Many of you were trained by Jaime Levy, Rabbi Jaime Levy. He was my first rabbi, and he asked me, you need a Jewish name for us to call you to the Torah. What's your father's name? Well, my father's name was Publio. Publio, that's Latin. That comes from public. That's people, Ami. You are Joseph ben Ami. So I said, that is going to be my legal name when I become an American citizen. And sure enough, that's exactly what I did. Because when I began to know about this, I had nothing to go on. I only had one thing for certain. My father's family, they were the Isleños. They were known in their neighborhood as the Isleños, the islanders, those from the Canary Islands. And that one thing I knew. So when I heard this for the first time, from a missionary with Jews for Jesus, he saw me and he said, your last name is Sephardic. And I was like, I don't even know what that is. And I began to investigate this. It took me 4 years to come to the place where I knew this was true. I knew the story was true. I knew my father was Spaniard, descended from Spaniards who emigrated to Venezuela. But I couldn't locate his last name. Last name is Vargas. It wasn't strong enough. No family histories, no family stories. I didn't grow up with them. My parents were not married. I saw my grandmother twice. My grandfather passed away before I was even born. No way for me to get the stories, see if there were any stories. But in my last conversation with my father, I asked him, Dad, tell me more last names. Tell me your parents' last name. Tell me your mom's maiden name. Tell me your father, all of this, whatever you know. And I'm on the computer looking on Sephardim.com. Today is Sephardim.co. And right there, you can not only find the last names, but you can find the sources. They tell you the sources, and they tell you the strength of the sources. So I'm talking to my dad. I'm on the internet, and he tells me my father's name was Vargas Aguilar. And my mother's maiden name was Hernandez. So I grab onto the Aguilar, and I go in, and I realize this thing has a plethora of sources, from Jewish cemeteries in the Netherlands, in England, everywhere. We even in the documents that Rabbi Mateus shared with us today, there was someone with the Aguilar last name. It comes straight from the Hebrew. The word igal in Hebrew, it means to. No, I asked for 25 minutes. Yes, thank you. And I got my thing here, it says 15 minutes. We'll go with the most generous one, right? So the word igal comes from the Hebrew word that means to go on circles, which is what an eagle does, to go on circle before they dive in looking to grab their prey. And so, therefore, the association with the word eagle, even in English, and in Spanish as well, of course, aguilar. And so, when I realized this is true, and this is true about me, about my family, then I had a question. This identity that was denied to me, now it's in my hands. Am I going to deny it to my children? Because now it was in my hands. Now it was up to me. And when I framed it that way, it was easy. It was an easy decision. I am returning. I am coming back. And as hard as it was, theologically speaking, I did it in faith. That when I talked to my dad, it was a Friday. That Friday night was my first Shabbat. And the next day, I opened up my Greek New Testament, and I went to Romans 10:4. The end of the law is Christ. No. The goal of the Torah is the Messiah. I learned it on my own. The Spirit of God taught it to me from the Greek scripture. What contribution do you have to make? What contribution do we as a body can make that will be missing if we do not return? So let me share with you to conclude my contribution. I study what is called the discourse analysis, which is to say that Scripture comes, every spoken or written thing comes in different genres. You know the word genre, genres of music, right? Whether it's country, rock, and 35 different flavors of country and 35 different flavors of rock. All of these are genres. Literature has a genre, has genres. Scripture comes in genres. The primary genre of the Torah is history, story. It is a story. If the Torah is a story, it has to have a plot. Every movie has a plot. Every story has a plot. The Torah is a story. It has to have a plot. Do you know what it is? Do you know what the plot of the Torah is? Let me ask you this question. Have you even heard that question before? Has that question even been asked? Do we know what the plot of the Torah is? You see, at the heart of a plot is a conflict. You have an introduction, then you have a conflict. This conflict keeps growing and growing until there is a confrontation. We call that the climax. From the climax, you have a resolution, and then you start winding down into a conclusion. Every story has that. The Torah has that. What is, to sharpen the focus of the question, what is the conflict of the Torah? Do we even know? Well, you're going to have to wait for me to write my dissertation, too. But I'll let you in on the secret. Genesis 3, the seed from Genesis 1 becomes an enmity. The seed of the woman, the seed of the serpent. The seed of the woman is blessed and receives possession of the land, or at least promise of the land. The seed of the serpent is cursed, or at least not blessed, like Lot. Lot is not blessed. It's not cursed, but he's not blessed. The seed of the serpent is not blessed and does not have possession of the land, except for one exception, and that's your huge conflict. That Canaan in Genesis 10 gets to dwell in the land, even though Canaan has a curse on him. That is a big problem. And this problem is going to grow throughout the Torah, and it's going to come to Numbers 13 and 14, and God is telling Israel, I have a mission for you. I need you to wipe out the Canaanites and expel them from the land because they are cursed, and they should not have possession of the land. And Israel says, no, we're not going to do that. Wow. Now what do you do? What's going to happen in this movie? How is this ever going to be solved? Guess what? We come to the end of the Torah, and Israel still does not have possession of the land, but Canaan does. And you have to wait until the book of Joshua to see even the beginning of that, because it isn't done completely. The ending, the climax and the resolution of the Torah happens in the Nevi'im, in the prophets. What a genius. What awesome literature to tie together the Torah and the Nevi'im, because the problem of the Nevi'im is going to be, are you going to be faithful to God in order to retain possession of the land, or will you need to be expelled like the Canaanites were? And we know the answer to that. And this story goes even into the New Testament. Will you receive him who is the prophet like unto Moses, or will you be expelled from the land? And we know the answer to that. We're still here. So that is going to be my contribution. But imagine, this isn't just a contribution to a little seminary or big seminary. This isn't a contribution just to the church. This question has not even been asked within Judaism. We don't even know the answer to this in all of our history as Israel and as the Jewish people. We have to have the answer to this question. What is the plot of the Torah? What is the conflict of the Torah? That is a world-class contribution. You have, as you return, you have a world-class contribution to make. But it will not happen if you do not return. God bless you.
And next time we have Rabbi Ben-Ami, we'll be saying Dr. Ben-Ami, hopefully, amen? Yeah, that'll be wonderful. Do you have the mic? You have the mic on there. Don't go to the restroom until you return that thing. Trust me. Speaking of restrooms, we have a 7-minute break. We're going to get some water. It's 3:36 right now, 3:38. So 3:38. So at 3:45, we're going to come back, and at 3:45, Yosef Kolner is going to be speaking. He's in charge of a yeshiva, and he's going to be speaking in English or Spanish? Ambos. Okay. So Hebreo. He's going to be speaking in Hebrew. So we got a 7-minute break. Use the restroom. Get a drink of water. Reconnect with someone you haven't seen.
Oh no, I don't like using that. I'm going to use it. Record you. It's not gonna okay, but I'm going to go run to I'm going to use the bathroom too. That's fine. When you come back, I'll put it on. Yes. Okay, good. So you want to put up my my first slide? Okay. You know what? Why don't you do the... Sure. Why don't you... Okay. No. Because I did 75-point type, but you know what? The thing is, why don't you put up the second slide first, because it's got some nice information on it.
Okay. Well, that's the one I've got right now, but I'll put the second slide up first.
Or
Both clickers didn't work, so it's computer.
okay, so if you could put on this one that says ancestral mathematics.
That's what I'll do. But when I put that slide up, it's going to display on the overhead
okay.
and the program. They won't see you; they'll just see that.
I don't care.
They'll hear you, but they won't see you.
It's fine. Perfect.
That'll work.
Yeah. You know, like, did you ever use OBS? No, if you use OBS, it lets you take. It takes you. No, it takes you. No, from the live stream, you could show what's on your computer and put it up in the corner, and then you can also see the.
They've got a way to do that with the Apple system.
Yeah,
but I don't know how to do it.
Okay.
I'm not an Apple guy. I'm a Unix guy.
Oh yeah. Well, Unix is kind of like a. Apple's kind of like a.
I can do it with Unix, but I can't do it with Apple. I don't know how to do it with Apple.
Yeah.
I can do it with Unix.
Well, in the program, it want to put it up there? Oh, I don't want to have to lose that. What happened now? Okay. You're going to call the people in? You're going to call the group in?
Yeah, let me see. Okay, guys, I know this is really fast. We're gonna get another break, but we're trying to hit our mark. We're gonna get another break. I'm gonna give you guys a 20-minute break in a little bit. After this, I think we're gonna have like a 20-minute break. So let's go. Everyone who's inside, let's go inside. Everyone who's outside, let's stay outside. Can we close the doors, please? Thank you. Thank you. All right, we have our next speaker is Rabbi Yosef Kolner. He's going to give you practical tools. I know this is a lot. After this talk, we're going to have a 20-minute break, a much longer break, and then we're going to be able to, and then we're going to hear from Rabbi Gil. But there are some time constraints. Yeah, Rabbi Gil, our very own Rabbi Gil from San Antonio. So we're going to do again, a break after this, but we do have some time constraints I'm trying to hit for certain reasons I won't get into. Rabbi Yosef Kolner. Amen. You're going to hear about his yeshiva. And do you want 25 minutes? Wonderful.
No, I want 35 minutes, but I only got 25 minutes. Okay. I have this timer. It doesn't mean I'm going to pay attention to it. Oh, a second here. Okay, do you want to just go put up the slide for me, please? Does that count against my time? Okay. Okay, you can, first of all, I want to thank you all for being here and for God giving you the ability to stay awake, especially during my presentation. Y lo siento mucho, pero tengo que compartir en inglés. Pero sabemos que español es el lenguaje celestial. So, I have to tell a little bit about myself. So I have a BA in Spanish and Latin American Studies. During that time, under my undergraduate degree, I was a student at the University of the Americas in Cholula, Puebla, where they have 365 churches, one for every day of the week. It's true. My master's degree is from the oldest Jewish college in the United States, Gratz College in Jewish Studies. I have a Doctor of Ministry from Wagner Leadership Institute. The founder was C. Peter Wagner from Fuller. Also have I know I have to tell you all this, is that we graduated from Ulpan Aleph when we immigrated to Israel. And I also had the opportunity to study at an Orthodox yeshiva with them knowing that I was a believer. And in Israel, in Sfat, the mystical city of Sfat. Also, I just want to mention to you that God has blessed me with the gift of being a Rosh Yeshiva, the head of a yeshiva, but it's in Spanish only. And there is Dr. Williams Peter from Maracaibo, Venezuela. No de Caracas, but he's from Maracaibo. And he's the director. We have a pretty definitive course The vehicle is Zoom, no video learning. You have to attend the live classes, and eventually you get a kind of degree. And if you want more information, I can just email you the whole curriculum. We have 80 students in Latin America who are enrolled in our program, and it's very important. Okay, so notice that this is called ancestral mathematics. In order to be born, you need 2 parents, 4 great-grandparents, 16 second great-grandparents, all the way down they have calculated 2,048 ninth great-grandparents. That makes you a very unique individual. Just imagine what would happen if one of those particular of your 2,048 grandparents had taken a different path. You wouldn't be you. And I dislike it when people say, oh, I wish I had different parents. If you had different parents, you wouldn't be here. You'd be a different person. So, if you want to go back one slide, please. Today, how to trace and discover your Jewish roots. Probably not more not to trace and discover, but to verify. So here's a warning. Do you want to set the alarm? Like we heard before, it's a warning. Next slide, sorry. Warning. Next slide. Every Spanish or Portuguese-speaking Jewish person is not necessarily Sephardic. Lágrimas. Some are Ashkenazic. So here you see the picture on to your left and to the right, some of my great-grandparents. I'm a child of my father's old age. My father was born in 1899. Can you imagine? And I was born in 1960. It's a lie. It's 1952. And here in the middle, you see a typical picture of a Sephardic family. So this slide tells you about that during and after World War II, many Ashkenazic Jews immigrated to South America for refuge. In the 21st century, fewer than 300,000 Jews live in Latin America, mostly Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Cuba, Mexico, Uruguay. And there are many more important Jewish sites found in Latin America with our synagogues, with the most notable being Beth Shalom Temple in Havana, which I happen to go to. So I want to tell you a little bit about my supposed Sephardic ancestry. And then I want to go to the next slide. Next slide. Sorry. So about some free resources. I'm looking at the clock, but not so good. Okay, 16 minutes, 32 minutes. Through according to my DNA, I did 2 tests. First with family tree DNA, which is the most accurate DNA for tracing Jewish ancestry. It's called FTD-DNA. And then I did a second DNA test, which goes back about 2,000 or 3,000 years, which actually shows in my DNA 2 interesting things, that 17,000 years ago, Napoleon and I have a common ancestor. And that from my haplogroup, which tells what DNA group I actually belong to, there's a subset within family tree DNA there's 194 of us that have a common paternal grandfather 750 years ago. And my particular strain of DNA shows up in 4% of the population of present-day Venezuela. And these are the kind of things that you can find out. So in my DNA, it shows that from, not sure it was my father or my mother, but the mixture of the two, that I have roots in Iberia before it became Spain. And then during the time of when Columbus was when Columbus went to the New World and the Jews were kicked out of Spain, part of my family went to Colombia, 3% parcero, 3% Colombian. And then another part of my family, like many Sephardic Jews, went to Italy, and in particular Tuscany. Then in Tuscany, the Jews eventually were kicked out, and many went north to where? The Germanic lands. I just would say the area of the Eastern Europe, and probably mixed within people who were Ashkenazic, because my great-great-grandmother actually, though she was born in Prussia, Lithuania, and the border, actually was from Holland. So it seems like there's a Sephardic line that somehow got messed up and became Ashkenazic. So it's been very, very curious that since the time I was about 12 years old, I always had a leaning toward Hispanic culture and the Spanish language, which I never knew why. And I always gravitated, and my first real experience with Hispanic culture was in Mexico. That's why they're my carnales. That's a slang, or mi hue. Mis hues. So, you might have to write this down. The first place that you could look for, next slide please, that you could look for Jewish genealogy is jewishgen.org. Free, gratis. Chinam. And then it's free to sign up for, and then the Jewish gen databases can be subdivided into Ashkenazic and Sephardic. And if you have the time, you could spend hours and hours and hours inputting last names, city names, and know that one thing we know about sobrenombres, they call it in Spanish, that are Sephardic. Ashkenazic Jews did not receive last names until about the late 1700s. But Sephardic last names have a very long, at least 1,000-year history, and they're considered more authentic. How many were aware of that? Now, there's one group that does a very excellent job at tracing your genealogy because their theology demands it. It's the Mormons. The Mormons believe that you need to baptize people who have passed away so that they can be saved. Of course, we know that that's erroneous theology. I hope you believe that's erroneous theology. And they have, let me go to the Mormon, go to where it says the next, not in this, the next, that's the Sephardic, go back that please. Back one slide. That's Jewish Gen, no, not free. Free again, free again. Next one, next. Next. Okay, then the next, let's skip the next one because I want to go to the next one. FamilySearch.org. They have almost every document that you could pay for on Ancestry.com for free. Census records, ship manifests, pictures that you don't even know exist. All kinds of information about your family, and you won't go to hell if you consult their database. You go to hell for other reasons. Next slide. So they have a huge archive, cemetery records, birth, death, marriage, census, obituary, everything. And I found out a lot of information about my grandparents, pictures of my great-great-grandfather. They went from New York to Norfolk, Virginia, by the way. All the pictures of the gravestones in the Jewish Hebrew cemetery of Norfolk. And some other things that are fascinating. Next slide. That they have on Family Search is they can connect you with people who are in their database that you are related to, including Audrey Hepburn or whoever. And you'll find out if you're related to somebody who's famous or infamous. Have you ever noticed that when people do past life regressions, they're never like thieves or murderers or rapists? They're always like the president of this or the king of this or nobody ever claims to have some kind of dire and dastardly background. Okay. Another free database where I was able, from the 1900 census, to be able to find on which ship my father's father came to the United States was the Statue of Liberty.org. And they have records from approximately 1893 of every ship that came into Ellis Island with passengers. Remember, they saw the Statue of Liberty, the name of the ship, the record, the ship manifest or the record, and it'll tell you where they came from, what language they spoke, what language their parents and grandparents spoke, and it's all for free. And you can actually print a copy of the ship that your grandparents came in on. I have some relatives also who had actually came to the United States because they first stopped in Havana, Cuba, before Fidel, and copies of their passports and it's all for free. That's a pretty good deal, isn't it? And if you find out something, you can pay me a 10% surcharge. See how much time I have left here. 6:37. Now here's some that you have to pay for. That means 2 or 3 less cups of coffee at Starbucks or Dunkin' Donut. The first one I recommend is Family Tree DNA. And I'll tell you why. This database gives your if you give them permission, your vital details. So my third cousin, who I didn't know, is into genealogy. And I had gotten back to my great-grandparents on my mother's side were from Belarus. And by the way, my grandfather, my grandmother's brother, is named Yankel Lev, who was the personal secretary of Leon Trotsky. That's why I'm such a rebel. It's true. They were communists. And I found out the city that we come from, Skittle, which is part of a suburb or under the district of Grodno, was a center of Jewish learning and a center of communism. Figures, right? Right, we got to have our foot in both locations. So anyway, my cousin, she contacted me, and the genealogical tree that I was trying to compile, she had already compiled. And so now I have 500 cousins and relatives that I didn't even know existed, all from taking just this DNA test, and all because, I had prayed that the Lord would help me connect with members of my family, because since I was a child of my father's old age, that most of my first cousins were already like in their 20s and 30s before I was even born. And also when we moved to Israel, I was also able to connect with my family members, which made it very easy for us to integrate into, if it can be easy to integrate into Israeli society and life, they made it as easy as possible. So, I don't receive any benefits. Next slide. But I would recommend that you first, the $79, sometimes there's a discount, called Family Ancestry. And that gives you it's what's called an admixture. It's a combination of your father and mother's DNA, which is divided up into what they call haplogroups, according to your DNA profile. They also give you a map of every person from who has an exact match to about a fifth cousin with names and email. And you can kind of get an idea, and a migration map which shows where your particular DNA group originated and how it moved from one part of the world to another. Then, depending on your theology or what you believe, because we know that Jewish ancestry prior to the first century was patrilineal primarily. That means descent from the father. And then Shea D. Cohen he teaches at Harvard. He wrote a very interesting book called The Beginning of Jewishness. Have you read that book, Dr. Seifert? And tells how the idea kind of morphed from patrilineal to matrilineal based on the principle is that you can always know who the mother of the calf was, but you could not know who the father of the calf was. So you can always know who the mother is, but not the father. And then, of course, during the time of the Galut, the exile, during the Roman period, there was a lot of forced, intimate relations between non-Jews, Roman soldiers, and Jewish women. So that's kind of how it transitioned. Then you could also take, if you believe in matrilineal, that's called mtDNA. And that's where my relatives from Belarus found me. Let's see, how much more time do I have? Oh, that means I got 4 minutes, right? Can I do some stand-up or something here? Or? But I think it's very important also to realize is that I do know somebody, an excellent teacher, who from Venezuela, I hope his lawyer isn't listening to this, Baptist pastor, fine gentleman. He went to Israel, and in the Museum of the Diaspora in Tel Aviv, he saw his last name under a list of, they call sobrenombres, Jewish last names. And automatically, he went to Israel as a Baptist pastor. He came back as a rabbi. It's not, no estoy bromeando, no es un chiste. It's true. And just because you have a Sephardic last name does not necessarily mean that you are Sephardic, because many times people who were servants, who served in people's households, they took on the last names of the people that they worked for. So, who's telling me to stop? Okay, so, why don't we lift our hands to heaven? Okay. So, I thank you, God, for bringing us together as a mishpacha, as a family united in Yeshua HaMashiach, who makes us one. And though cultural distinctions and ancestry are very important, it's more important that we belong to the family of God. So I ask you to strengthen, to bring health, understanding, mercy, peace, rivers of living water, and that you would pour out your mercy and your blessing from heaven to heal, to quiet the troubled waters of our life. For as the Bible says, you have given us everything that we need that pertains to godliness and this life. And we thank you for what is written in your word, that the eye has not seen, nor the ear heard, nor the mind been able to imagine what God has in store for those who love him. Can you say, I love you? Te amo, te adoro. Show us what you have in store for us. The promise is that if we love you, you will reveal your will to us by your Spirit. And we thank you for doing this. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. One more minute. Abba, anachnu po, כמו המשפחה שלך. ואנחנו רוצים לשמוע את הקול שלך. אנחנו רוצים לדעת מה שאתה רוצה. ואנחנו מודים ואומרים תודה לך בשם ישוע המשיח. Amen. Okay. Thank you so much.
Tada. Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, get you. Yeah.
I'm thanking you that I don't trust anybody.
אנחנו שמחים שבאת להיות איתנו, ותודה מאוד. תודה רבה. I'm so tired right now at this point. I mixed the, okay, we're good. תודה רבה, ועכשיו, what's השעה? עכשיו, מה יש? What is it right now? Okay. הפסקה עכשיו. הפסקה 20 דקות. So we have a 20-minute break. But I just want to say real quick before, because you're saying this, in doing this, it's a little bit of, when you're looking at the genealogy, it's a little bit tricky with because there's records and there's things like this. There's also with the Ashkenazi lineage, there's what you call bottlenecks. So the bottlenecks where there's just a few families at a time. So a lot of Ashkenazim, if you go back a few hundred years, there's just a handful of families.
After about 1750 something, it gets more difficult.
Right, but the point is there's these bottlenecks, so it's easier to find those markers. But with the Sephardim, it's a little trickier because you don't have the same bottlenecks, and so it's tricky. That being said, this conference is a little bit, it feels a little bit like brain surgery, because on one end we're talking about DNA, on the other end we're talking about theology, on the other end we're talking about history. It's just there's a lot going on. And so hopefully this is not the last conference where we discuss these things, because they're necessary. They should be discussed. And really there are so many people throughout Latin America, again, we've heard this again, who you'll at least nominally they are affiliating themselves with Am Yisrael, with the people of Israel. And again, this is something that I also think it's important right now in these times of heightened anti-Semitism. I mean, not just thinking short-sightedly, but they have a neshama, Jewish soul that connects to Am Yisrael. So I think it's wonderful. This is one of the wonderful tools, and this is really great. We're going to do a 20-minute break. We're going to do a 20-minute break. You're going to try to get a drink of water, try to keep your sanity intact, because there's just so much information. It's just so much going right now. Again, like you said, the main thing, whether you're Ashkenazi, Sephardic, whether you're not Jewish, the main thing is we're all part of the family of God. Amen? Amen. All right.
And if you have questions during the 20 minutes,
Come find it.
$2 a minute.
Okay, there you go. That's for the family and friend discount right there. And pesos too, accepted. Okay, we'll see you in 20 minutes, 4:35 for Rabbi Gil from our very own Baruch Hashem. Thank you so much.
go here.
Dot O-R-D.
G.
Oh, O-R-G.
Here, let me show you here.
There it is.
Yeah, and then there'll be you'll sign up.
Okay.
You create an account.
Okay.
And then you'll go to the Sephardic database. So there'll probably be like an hourglass kind of a search kind of a thing once you get into here. And then you're going to search, you're going to go from here, look at Jewish Gen, the beginning, South America, Latin America, Sephardic. Gives you all these different categories.
Okay.
And you just click on the one you're interested in.
Okay. I'll do that. My wife wanted to know what was that website that you were giving us about the ship?
Oh, that's Ellis Island.
Right.
They changed the name of it. It used to be Ellis. Here. This is statueofliberty.org.
Okay. Let me take a picture of that
Yeah.
real quick.
Yeah. It'll take you to this, and then you'll have to weave your way through the 65 million passenger records.
Okay.
And that's a place to start. That's how you connect.
Okay. Somebody told me that I might also be Ashkenazi and Sephardic.
Yeah.
Due to the fact that
That's like I said.
I'm also of Spanish German
Yeah.
descent.
Well,
too.
that's what. Well, remember what I said was that on my, I think it was my father's side. I'm not sure if it was my father or my mother's side. They went from Spain to Colombia and or Italy, and then Tuscany, and then the Tuscany Jews or Sephardic, they were forced to move northwards to Germany, and some intermarried, so they became Ashkenazic. Though if you look farther back, they were really Sephardic. And then my father's grandmother was, well, I don't even know if she was born in Germany, but she's Dutch. But she was so either the family sent for her to marry, would be my great-great-grandfather. You know, someone knew someone, and then you sent to she was living in Holland at that time. We were able to find all her parents and everything. And so probably she was, Sephardic. But I don't know that for sure.
Right. So interesting.
Yeah, good. And so for marriage, when you do the DNA test, they assign you to a group. It's called a haplogroup based on your blood type and all your genes. But yeah, but with no. Well, no, not a blood type for your DNA. In your DNA, there's like 1,000 different groups. And then within that group, I belong to a subgroup that connected me to 194 other people where we have a common ancestor 750 years ago. And then from that one, we were able to find out, based on the DNA, we all have common ancestors from 17,000 years ago, all based on blood. I know. My wife said, I don't know how I don't mean either. But it's just interesting.
I was just wondering what would be the best one to do my DNA. I've never done
Family tree DNA. FT, I think it's called FTDNA. I found that to be the best, or was the most meaningful to me. Let me show you.
Oh yeah, that one right there. Okay.
I'm surprised that this came out so small.
Got it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it.
God bless you. Yeah.
All right, everyone. Those were 20 minutes, entre comillas, in quotation marks. Ben Geshaim. All right, everyone. We're starting again. Come back. If you're inside, let's go inside. If you're outside, let's go outside. We're gonna have Rabbi Gil. Then we're
Baruch Hashem. And today I'm going to be doing a little conference on the history of the Sephardic Jews in Texas. Okay? Now, you need to understand this is a very broad term, a very broad subject, but I'm going to talk just about, a very small portion of it. And also, along with that, we'll be speaking about the origins, the language, the general patterns of migration, relations between Sephardic and Ashkenazis. Also, we'll bring up a few prominent rabbis and some traditions. So there'll be a little bit of everything in this talk that I'm going to give you. What are the origins of the Sephardim? The origins are the Iberian Peninsula, and Sephardim come from the tribe of Yehuda and Levi, as well as other tribes. It is estimated that between 100,000 to 300,000 Jews were expelled from Spain in 1492 in accordance with the Alhambra decree. Sephardim traveled to North Africa, Portugal, throughout Europe, the Ottoman Empire, and America. And when I say America, I'm not talking necessarily just the United States, but talking about Central and South America. About the language, while the Ashkenazim spoke Yiddish, which was a combination of Hebrew, German, Polish, and Russian, the Sephardim developed Ladino. Ladino is a combination of Hebrew, Spanish, and Portuguese. Ladino is an archaic form of Castilian, Spanish mixed with Hebrew elements. It was carried to its present linguistic areas by the descendants of Spanish Jews from Spain in 1492. There are many differences between Ashkenazi Jews and Sephardic Jews, but also more similarities. For instance, if we look at diet, the diet of the Ashkenazim is more Eastern European influenced, and it is what most of the Goyim refer to as Jewish food. The Sephardic diet is influenced by Spanish, Portuguese, and after 1492, the Americas. Thus, the Sephardic diet is more varied and spicy too. There are differences between the Ashkenazi and the Sephardi Jews. In a literal sense, as I said before, Sepharad refers to the Iberian Peninsula, Spain, Portugal, etc. Ashkenaz refers to Germany and the Holy Roman Empire. However, when referring to Sephardic Jews, the name has grown to encompass Jews from the Mediterranean regions, including Spain, Greece, North Africa, and many times the Middle East as well. Ashkenazi has come to include Jews hailing from places such as Eastern and Central Europe, including countries such as Hungary, Lithuania, Poland, and Russia. Over time, Ashkenaz and Sephardi Jews developed distinct ways of pronouncing their Hebrew. There is much debate over the origins of these dialects. One side states that the split occurred in medieval Europe. Others say that the split can be traced back to the Geonic period, or the 7th to 15th or 11th centuries. Others say that the divide can be traced still further to Mishnaic times, which is the 1st and the 2nd centuries. Regardless of which theory one subscribes to, it is clear that the distinct pronunciations go back quite a bit. So while it's tempting to make sweeping generalizations and just split the different pronunciations into Sephardic and Ashkenazic, in truth, there are many variants in Ashkenaz and Sepharad themselves. Next page. The Hebrew contains 22 letters and 12 vowels. Ashkenazim don't differentiate between the het and the hof. The Sephardim do. Ashkenazi pronounce the non or accented tav similar to the samech. Next page. Most Sephardim pronounce like the text. Shabbat is Shabbos in Ashkenazi. It is pronounced Shabbat by the Sephardim. It should be noted that in ancient Hebrew, all letters and vowels had distinct sounds, And both Ashkenaz and Sepharad have some of those distinctions. And here's an oversimplification for the purpose of this conference. Next page. The differences in pronunciation are like differences in culture. Both are acceptable in prayer, etc., as long as we remain consistent throughout. Who were some of the prominent Sephardic rabbis? Under Muslim rule, they were arguably the most illustrious Jewish community in the world. Sepharad produced Torah scholars, scientists, financiers, and thought leaders whose works are still being studied today. Next slide. Here we will list some of the most prominent rabbis, focusing upon those who directly influenced the development of halachic tradition for their respective communities. The first one's name is Hasdai ibn Shaprut. He's from Sepharad, from the years 915 to 975. He was a wealthy physician and statesman. Hasdai was a scholar who led Spanish Jewry into prominence. Under his stewardship, Cordoba became a thriving center of Jewish life and learning. Then we have Rif. He's from Sepharad in the year 1013 to 1103. He was a native of Fez, Morocco. Rabbi Yitzhak Al-Fasi summarized the entire Talmud, highlighting salient points and resolving undecided issues. Then we have Rambam from Sepharad, 1135 to 1204. He was born in Spain and perhaps the most influential teacher of Torah in the past 1,000 years. Rabbi Moshe, or Moses ben Maimon, also known as Rambam or Maimonides, from Egypt, wrote extensively on Jewish law, medicine, philosophy, and Jewish beliefs, mostly in Arabic. Then we have another rabbi by the name of Rosh, from 1250 to 1327. Rabbi Asher ben Yechiel was born in Germany, but flourished in Spain. He drew from both Ashkenazi and Sephardic traditions in his halachic commentary on Talmud. We have another rabbi by the name of Tur. He lived from 1275 to 1349. He was the son of Rosh. Rabbi Yaakov ben Asher used the teachings of his father, Rambam, and Rif to determine the rulings in his magnanimous, his magnum opus, Arba Turim, which means 4 towers, which established the template upon which the code of Jewish law is based. The first, Tur Arach Chaim, way of life, deals with the laws and the precepts of the Jews' daily life, including Shabbat and festivals, the prayers of the mitzvot, which one must observe every day. The second, Tur Yodea, teacher of knowledge, deals mainly with the laws of kashrut, shechita, and all questions of the Jewish dietary laws. It also contains laws of idolatry, vows, charity, the study of Torah, and laws of mourning, etc. Then he has another book that he wrote called Tur Even Heiser, and it contains the laws of marriage, divorce, and the Jewish family life. Tur Hoshen Mishpat, the breastplate of judgment, is a code of Jewish law and criminal law. The Arba Turim are the standard reference books of rabbis and scholars to this very day. Their clear and simple style makes them highly popular and understandable. Ashkenaz and Sepharad are not two distinctive streams, but rather they are 2 pillars upon which Judaism is firmly ensconced, rooted in tradition, and anchored in dedication. So how did the Sephardim come to Texas? In 1492, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella signed a decree requesting all Jews to leave Spain. They had between 3 and 4 months from the declaration to the time they had to leave Spain. In doing so, they had to leave behind all property, all gold, all silver, and all jewelry. Christopher Columbus, Cristobal Colon, made note of them in his captain's log. Many crypto-Jews began to establish communities in New Spain and as far north as San Antonio, Texas. So we're living right in that place. By the late, the Spanish Jews had become so successful that the Dominicans asked the Roman Catholic Church to bring the Inquisition from Spain, which it did. During this time, one man, Hernando Alonso, was burned at the stake. During this time, Sephardic Jews became increasingly hated because of their commercial sources and because they supposedly, no proof of it, assisted the Moors. During the late 1400s and early 1500s, the names of 4 Sephardic Jews became significant. Gaspar Castellano Sosa, who was a conquistador, Luis Carvajal II, who was a professional soldier, João de la Porta, who was a pirate, and Jean Lafitte, who established Galveston. Understand that wherever New Spain conquered, the Inquisition immediately followed. This meant that many Sephardim became crypto-Jews. What is a crypto-Jew? A crypto-Jew was a Jew, such as the 1573 law of settlement required all explorers to keep a detailed journal of all activity for the sake of the governor who had commissioned them. These journals ordered the death of these forms at the hands of the Inquisition via burning at the stake. Gaspar Castano de Sosa became the first documented Jew to enter Texas. Carvajal the Younger became the governor of the largest landmass granted, from Tampico to San Antonio, Texas. He circumcised himself on the bank of the Panuco River, and then he was arrested and burned at the stake. His end was one that became common in both Mexico and Texas. Now, there was a Texas governor who governed the largest swath of land from Tampico in Mexico to northern New Mexico. And he was executed by the Inquisition and burned at the stake. The problem was that his nephew was the general of the Texan army. Upon hearing of his uncle's fate, he rode to San Antonio, Texas. He arrested the inquisitors and slew them by cutting their throats on the banks of the San Antonio River. And this put an end to the Inquisition in Texas and brought peace to the Sephardic Jews of Texas. And that is the end of my conference.
Thank you, Rabbi Gil. Rabbi Gil's our own rabbi here. I'm glad the kids are up watching Veggie Tales right now, and they're not here with us. All right. I always joke about how it would be difficult to put some of the passages from the Tanakh into. Thanks so much. Rabbi Gil, he leads our Sephardic service, and he was I'm losing the slang of the day. What's it? Recently, and we said we need to stay in touch, and here we are now. It says Rabbi Dr. Richard Nichols served as senior rabbi of Congregation Ruach Israel Needham, Massachusetts, from 1981 to 2020. He now serves the congregation as Rabbi Emeritus. He is currently the president of the Messianic Jewish Theological Institute, MJTI, and formerly has served as president of both the Messianic Jewish Rabbinical Councils, MJRC, and the Union of Messianic Jewish Congregations, the UMJC, as well as vice president of the International Messianic Jewish Alliance, that's the IMJA. I know this is very tough, and if anyone wants to, there's a lot of acronyms. I'm hearing the translator here. Thank you for bearing with me. Rabbi Nichols received a BA in music from Ithaca College, an MDiv degree from Biblical Theological Seminary, and a doctoral ministry degree in homiletics from Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary, and a Master of Jewish Studies degree from Hebrew College in Newton, Massachusetts. He received a smicha, which is ordination, from the Union of Messianic Jewish Congregations in 1986, and from the Messianic Jewish Rabbinical Council, MJRC, in 2016. Rabbi Rich, as he is commonly known, and his wife Susan live in Needham, Massachusetts. Nearby, there are 4 grown children and a growing gaggle of grandchildren. I didn't know that's what it was called, a gaggle. So anyways, there you go. Here's the man with the gaggle, and with Rabbi Rich. He blesses us with his music, and he's going to bless us a little bit with his knowledge as well. And come on up here, Rabbi Rich. Thank you.
20. Yeah. Oh, I need that? Okay.
Do you have a mic?
Yeah.
You need this to.
Oh, I do. Whoa. Okay.
And then if you need to put it here to play.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, that's fine. Why don't we do that? Just stick that in there. Well, shalom, everybody. I have to tell you, this sanctuary is great. You know why? Because it reminds me so much of our congregation at home with the beautiful vaulted ceiling, you know? And you've got a new ark, and our new ark will be delivered, we expect, over this next few weeks. We've been waiting 3 years for it to be completely finished. So felt very much at home. But I have to tell you, I loved playing with your band last night. And I want to tell you why. Because for years, I have been waiting to play this. A Latin Jewish lick that I love so much. It's very simple. I can't play that in my synagogue. You know what I mean? It's just not the maybe I need to convert to Sephardic. Is there a category? I don't know. Well, anyhow, it's great to be with you. I want to share with you for a little while. My subject for the next few minutes is building together for the sake of our great-grandchildren. Okay? And it's a very important subject because as Americans, speaking as Americans, we tend, and Westerners maybe more generally, we tend to be oriented toward immediate success, and we don't tend to think in terms of the long arc of what success looks like. So my remarks are based largely on my experience in ministry over these many years, and as a husband and as a father. So, you know, I'm Ashkenazic. My grandparents were from Moscow and Kiev and Latvia and Vilnius. And I became a believer in 1971 and have enjoyed my relationship with Yeshua just absolutely immensely, as I know is true for all of you. And along the way, I've had the privilege of helping to start or be part of, at some level, the start of various institutions. I remember the very first meeting of the UMJC, and that was a long time ago. And then the Messianic Jewish Rabbinical Council, which I will tell you about because I think it has some relevance to what we're all about here. It's a community of rabbis who have come together to hear the voice of God as to what Messianic Judaism is supposed to look like. So we'll talk about that a little bit, or what it can look like. And then, of course, I've had the privilege of being the president of the Messianic Jewish Theological Institute, which is really a great school. And I bring you gifts. I brought you some of our academic journal, and that sounds so highfalutin, but it's very accessible to lay folks. And there's one article in particular by Rabbi Yonatan Lasko, all about having a child with a severe difficulty, with a severe physical ailment, and what was that like in the times of Besorah and in the mentality and the attitudes of the times. And I want to recommend that article in particular. These are free, just take them. I just brought a few of them for you. But again, we want to commit to building Messianic Judaism, and particularly the relationship of the Sephardic Messianic Jewish community, and the brilliant lecture we just heard, thank you so much for that, and the Ashkenazic, as, to use the example given, the two pillars of a unified Jewish people. And of course, we particularly capture that, the essence of that, as followers of Yeshua. So, building for the long haul. You know, Sue and I have our 50th anniversary May 25th. That's not bad, right? 50 big ones? Sure, why not? And just had our 9th grandchild, little Rivka. She's so cute, she's so adorable. We need one more for a minion. Or at very least a baseball team with an umpire. You know, so either are good. And so we're looking forward to that. And then in terms of our synagogue, you know, I tell you, I'm not the leader anymore. Rabbi Nathan is. He's a graduate of MJTI. He's got a degree from one of the finest music schools in the United States, too, the New England Music Conservatory. We do a lot of playing together at Purim and things. But anyhow, it's really a neat place, and I hope many of you will visit us. If you're ever in Boston, come and join us on Shabbat. I think you'd enjoy it. And, you know, it's a congregation where 85% Jewish people, and it's not a small group. I mean, maybe the whole community is about 120, something like that. But we've been able somehow to navigate this very difficult dynamic of how do you have a significant Jewish majority without making people who aren't Jewish feel like chopped liver. You know what I mean? And that is a very difficult thing, because the acceptance rejection dynamic is one of the most powerful motivators for good and bad in the human experience. And so we've been rather successful in that regard. The UMJC, I'll tell you something great about the union, and I am so glad that Jeff is spearheading an initiative where more and more Sephardic Jews can consider what we're all about, and then at the delegate level consider what kind of relationship this might look like. But one of the things about the union is that there is this attitude of celebrating the different and embracing those who have visions which are consonant with the UMJC's vision and yet have their own distinctives. I'll give you a great example. Tikkun International. How many of you know Tikkun? Are you familiar with it at all? Some of you are. That's Rabbi Dan Juster. Great guy. We go back, a very long time. And Tikkun has its own orientation. They have several congregations in Israel. They are oriented very much to the gifts of the Spirit, the fivefold ministry, and things like that. They're serious about Jewish identity, but they inflect it slightly differently than some others. And the Messianic Jewish Rabbinical Council, which Jeff mentioned, and that is a really, really important group of some of the, in my view, some of the brightest guys, and women too. We have a number of women associated with us who ask the all-important question, okay, we keep talking about Torah, keep Torah. What does that exactly mean to real people? We had to talk about candlelighting. We had to talk about so many different things. How do we prioritize the first and second day of Rosh Hashanah? Zillions of things over these many years. And we've come to some good conclusions. It's like bailing the ocean out with a spoon. There's so much more that we need to do. But it's a wonderful institution. But these are institutions that are intended for the long haul. Again, we're thinking about our great-grandchildren, or at least I'm thinking in those terms. And I know many of you can relate to that. How can we have something of substance for them, not platitudes, not empty phrases, not incomplete thoughts, but substance to pass on to these little kiddies who are so cute and so adorable and deserve our best? You see, that is really what we're talking about. In connection with the Messianic Jewish Rabbinical Council, I would like to, Rabbi Jonathan Kaplan, could you just stand and wave? Jonathan is one of our stalwarts in terms of creating, of helping us come to grips with the halachic norms that, at least in terms of the communities in our sphere, we commend to people. And Jonathan, a million thanks to you for all you have done for the MJRC, and that's not a platitude, my friend. You know it's not. So, anyhow, let me just say this. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here. I want to talk with you about what I would commend to you all. Scholars in the community here, and let me tell you, you got some really sharp people around here. I'm very, very impressed, to say the least. But I want to suggest some strategies and ways of moving ahead for the sake of those grandkiddies. And I'm going to read a little bit. The Spanish-speaking Messianic Jewish world needs to work things out, not relying on Ashkenazic leadership to guide, much less control your decisions about communal formation. That's really important. Your unique history and makeup demands this. We are gringos. What is Hebrew for gringos? Gringos. We put the accent at the end, I suppose, in Hebrew. Okay, your wise leadership must guide the way for your community. We do not need an imperialistic impulse here. We do not need a condescending, we've got it, you don't. That is not the way it should work. However, a two-way street